Mayuresh Joshi is with us to run us through what he's making of things. Mayuresh, tomorrow is the last day of the week, and then day after there is the PM speech, and then there is the summit in Alaska with regards to Ukraine. So there are some important triggers from a market perspective. Near term, do you have a view? Is the risk to the upside, to the downside? What's your sense? Is there a big move around?
Afternoon, Prashant. No, I think there are a lot of events, as you just pegged off. And therefore, I think the markets will be viewing these events with a very, very sharp and keen eye. Obviously, I think what we've gone through at this juncture, I think the markets have gestated the worst, both in terms of the tariff imposition that has probably happened on India, as well as the expectations in terms of what might happen going forward as well. Obviously, I think Trump has deferred the entire China thing by 90 odd days. He's obviously visiting Russia in a resolution to probably stop the Ukraine war. And therefore, I think the markets are globally taking on these events very, very positively. From our perspective itself, I think a combination of factors together, including expectations of how earnings will play out and richer valuations, is something that capped market gains. But in my opinion, and how we see it at MarketSmith India, I think even if distribution days have gone up, which means that the correction that we've seen in the last few days have really taken Nifty way down as we speak on the downside. But I think there is not much of a downside risk as we see it. There is expectations of earnings improvement over the next few quarters. And there is expectation that as resolutions start happening on the global front, I think things might normalize even as FPI and FDI flows have moderated to a large extent. Domestic flows have remained extremely strong. And therefore, a combination of these factors, corporate earnings expected to improve, and expectations in terms of global macros probably just bottoming out in terms of the worst, in terms of what the markets are expecting, might actually prop markets higher. So I think structural downside is something that we are not foreseeing for the internet.
Okay. All right. Hi, Mayuresh. Good to see you. Mayuresh, any view on HBL Engineering? We're talking about a sluggish market, things not moving too well. This stock is up 25% in this week.
It's in a new one.
Yeah.
Back to highs. Yeah.
Absolutely. It saw a big correction and the stock has run away. Any view? HBL Engineering?
I think we don't track this one, Nigel, but I think an interesting space within the capital goods or infrastructure stories, one which I've always carried in our local and global portfolios, Pennar Industries, and also its competitor to a certain extent, Interact, built developers. I think somewhere what is happening is the expectations in terms of pre-engineering buildings and the market size itself. The expectation here is that from 18,000 crore market that exists for the pre-engineered buildings, that can actually double over the next 3 to 4 years. Again, a large part of the market is unorganized, and therefore I think organized players like a Pennar or an Interact might actually start benefiting quite significantly. And therefore, our own sense is that integrated facilities with expansions that are probably happening for both these companies put together, earnings growth along with market share gains, because there are very limited players within the organized players and the listed players itself that can have a decent chunk of new orders probably flowing their way with better margins and with capacities at their behest. As they continue executing well, I think forward-looking numbers might be good. So we're not covering HBL, but I think a few of these pre-engineering stocks, EV stocks, might actually do well.
All right. Mayuresh, I wanted to ask you about Bajaj Housing. I recall when it listed, there was so much excitement. The stock became so expensive. If I'm not mistaken, let's pull up a 1-year chart. It went all the way to around 185 or thereabouts. And from there, it's come down to around 110 rupees. Bajaj Housing is the one I'm talking about. Let's get the right stock first up for our viewers on the screen. Not Bajaj Finance. I do want a longer term chart. Bajaj Housing is what we're talking about. Let's get it up for our viewers. It's down close to around 3%. And, post listing, the stock went dancing away to around 185 rupees. Mayuresh, what's the view on this name? It ran ahead of itself, but at around 108, what's your view? I'll tell you why I'm asking you. In the SLBM market, there's unusually very, very high volume out here. It's 35 to around 40 lakh. You never know, maybe there's fresh supply that's likely to come in there. What's your view on it?
No, so if it corrects a little more, Nigel, I think it will start looking very, very attractive. Obviously, I think the expectation here is that with the rate cuts that have probably happened, the cost of borrowing for better rated players will obviously be at the forefront. And better rated players like a Bajaj Housing, which has a very strong parent or a parent pedigree, somewhere like LIC Housing, PNB Housing as well. Yes, there has been a management change out there, but the core dynamics of the business still remain intact and extremely strong in our opinion. And therefore, I think with rate cuts, a lot of fence sitters who are probably looking at mortgages, registrations are still looking extremely strong. You look at the registration data in Mumbai, in Maharashtra, across the length and breadth of the country, still remains very, very stable. And therefore, I think the element of growth expected to come through with asset quality pressures expected to remain benign. I think a combination of these two factors, along with better capital adequacy for the better rated players, will obviously mean better balance sheet growth, better ROEs and better ROAs as well. And therefore, I think if it declines further, yes, I think this stock will make a proper base as we look at it in MarketSmith India. But something like a PNB Housing as well, with the correction that has probably happened, the affordable and the emerging segment, where the yields are significantly higher for PNB Housing, and they've got a very good handle in terms of asset quality issues as well, might actually do that.
Any thoughts on Force Motors? Big move today, but more importantly, 200% this year so far. YTD, Mayuresh, big re-rating here.
Oh, absolutely. So anybody holding can continue holding, because I think the momentum remains extremely strong with them. The expectation largely is that the kind of product mix that they have, it should largely start benefiting them. And it has already started getting displayed on numbers. So somewhere I think the expectation and the hope on the street is that the product mix probably holds out for them. The expectation from a margin performance holds out for them as well. And therefore, I think anybody holding on to this stock should continue holding. Our top pick, Prashant, within the auto universe remains Hyundai India within the four-wheelers and TVS Motors within the two-wheelers.
Mayuresh, you track the agrochem space also closely. I think last time you were talking about Zuari Agro. Insecticides India? Have you analyzed the numbers? The stock has fallen off a cliff, 11% down.
Didn't get the time, Rima, but honestly, I think this space looks very, very interesting even now. I think what has really happened and transpired is that the volumes have remained extremely robust with the early onset of monsoons this time around. The farm gate prices, which had remained extremely stable, are expected to remain stable going forward as well. And with input cost remaining very, very soft and benign, I think that leverage component obviously played out for a whole host of players within this space itself. Again, going forward, I think with a better monsoon around, with a better Kharif season, there is expectation of a better Rabi season because of the better moisture content that might still remain. And therefore, I think the hope for agrochemical players to probably have a better show going forward as well, with better control on costs, will mean better numbers on the bottom line as well. So very, very interesting space. I think we continue holding stocks like a Coromandel, Deepak. I discussed stocks like a Paradeep, Bangalore as well.
Okay.
Premier Explosives, last word, quick word. Mayuresh, do you track it?
Decent order book, Prashant. I think 2.5 times of FY24 revenues. Margins have been pretty decent this time around at 15%. They executed well, specifically on their defense segment. Even a large component of their order book is largely defense, more than 80%. And therefore, I think the expectation is that the execution should continue happening at a very, very decent pace. Margins, again, I think if you historically look at margins, as a comparison to last year, were significantly higher. So if they're able to execute well, and the cost of material is under control, I think there can be every scope of margin expansion as well. So I think good set of numbers getting to